Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure for this episode to be joined by Renee Williams. And first of all, Renee, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and to sharing. And as I always do with all of our guests, I'm going to ask you to please introduce yourself to all of our audience.
Thank you, Brian. It's fantastic to be here. As you said, I'm Renee, and I call myself a clothing repair advocate. So I'm just really, really passionate about mending clothes, about raising the awareness that that's an option for people, that it's something that people can incorporate into their lives, and that it's not difficult. So, yeah, your Kiwi listeners will be able to tell that I'm Australian. I've been in New Zealand for 2.5 years. I've been lucky enough to live in quite a few different countries before New Zealand, and I think all of those experiences have contributed and impacted where I've ended up today.
Beautiful. And were you always interested in this side of mending and clothing and actually repairing like clothing?
Not so much, no. It's been quite a journey. I grew up in a family where sewing was reasonably normal. My mum sews a lot, and my grandmother was a professional seamstress. I probably dabbled in it a bit as a kid, so I was aware that was something that people did. I had a bit of an epiphany when I had my second daughter, and I was spending a lot of time at home, as young mothers tend to do, and I don't really know what caused this to happen, but I just was thinking about my grandmother and the skills that she has, and I thought, I really need to learn before she's not here anymore. She has all this skill and it's just going to be gone. And so that was the start of the journey, and I have persisted with learning from that point on, and she's not here anymore, and I do have quite a lot of her equipment, which I love, and I know that she was really happy that someone was taking it on. I'm not especially amazing at sewing, but it's something that I like to do as a hobby. So that's how that started, and the first few years, the things that I made were really very average. And I think it's a real lesson to allow yourself to be a beginner at something, and to accept that, okay, I've made this thing and it's really not good, but I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, how and I talk about this with so many different topics that around conscious living that um, 2 generations ago, 3 generations ago, um, a lot of the convenience that we have nowadays with the plastic products and fast fashion and like that wasn't there. So people needed to have the skills to whatever they had, repairing it and making sure that things last longer. And like I didn't grow up with that. Like I mean, I never, when I was a kid, I never learned how to sew, how to patch things together. Like I never had that knowledge, and it was actually something that, for whatever reason, I thought that was quite a weird thing. Like seeing sometimes like some women like knitting or doing something. I'm like, look at that weird lady. and and how that shifted for me like through the years, and seeing the importance of it. And it's amazing, as you say, like being able to have the possibility to actually learn from your grandma and have that connection as well. That must have been amazing.
Yeah, it was, and I'm really glad that for whatever reason that thought occurred to me, that I felt like there was a time imperative that I needed to take it on, and yeah, and I feel like now with teaching mending skills to people, that hopefully I'm passing it on to a wider audience.
Yes, and it's interesting And I do wanted to ask you this. How do people respond to it? Do you find it that most people that are coming to it from like a curiosity space, or from a place that they do want that skill because they need to repair their clothes because for perhaps they can't afford new ones?
It's probably a bit of both. I think people that are learning these skills at the moment are people that are reasonably proactive and are really recognizing that that they can, you know, you can really make a difference. You can really, you know, if you have your favorite jeans, your favorite jacket, it's kind of like a bit of a superpower to be able to resurrect them and keep wearing them, and then not have to go and try and find those favorite items of clothing again. I feel like a lot of people say to me that they are no good at it, or that they had a bad experience at school, and so they tend to have that idea that it's very difficult, or that it's not something that they are able to do. And in fact, both of those things are not true. It's really not difficult if you are happy to be a beginner for a little while, and to accept that when you first learn something, it's not always going to be perfect.
Yes.
Also, I mean, with mending, we're not going for perfect. That's not the idea. And certainly I like to practice visible mending, where we're not actually even trying to hide the mend. We're just incorporating it, adding a bit of personality to the garment. It's supposed to look hand done. It's not supposed to look like a machine or a robot did it. It's kind of adding to the garment, adding to its story, I think.
That's such a good thing. And I do want to touch on a couple of the things that you just mentioned, because that beginner's mindset and allowing oneself to do something that doesn't perhaps outwardly look perfect, it's so important, because like until I actually learn and practice something, I'm in a sense like not going to be perfect. Like perhaps someone had that already built in and they are amazing, but the majority of people, we need that capacity of being open to trying right. something new.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so important. And the other thing, you know, I think that what you just mentioned is our relationship with our clothes. And I was wondering if you can share from your experience and from your perspective, how is that for you changed now through these years that you've been mending clothes, and what do you see for like society in general?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. There has been a shift towards a faster pace of purchasing clothes. That clothes are, you know, people over the last 20 or 30 years, they buy more and at a lower price point, and therefore it's not made well and it's not designed to last. And if you put your time and effort into your clothes, you really come to appreciate them, and you want to take good care of them. You've put your time and effort into them. And so I find that mindset also, I don't just look at like fixing the problem of a repair when it needs to be done. I'm also thinking about that when I am going to purchase something, and having a look at the piece of clothing and thinking, is this something that I'm going to want to mend? Am I going to want to keep it for a long time and put my effort into it? Does it look like it's well made? Is it going to last? You know, it's I'm looking at it as a bit more of a commitment than just I'm going to wear it on Saturday and then I have no thought about what's going to happen to it after that.
Definitely. And this is like one of the things for me, since I joined the fashion revolution movement, to be able to understand more about the impact that making that choice of buying a new garment that perhaps I'm just going to use once or not multiple times, like that has a huge footprint. And for me to be able to see this from the perspective of, as you were saying, like, is this something that I'm going to be wanting to wear like long term? Like, if I actually buy something that is of good quality, and then I know that I can repair it or like put a parchment or something, this might be like throughout my entire life, unless of course my body changes a lot in its shape. But
Yeah.
being able to see that, I love from the fashion revolution, one of the, I don't know if to call it the slogan, but it's the loved clothes last.
Yes, exactly.
and
Yeah.
and I love that, because it's like having that relationship with
Yes,
what we are wearing and the things that we have.
that's right. And it's important to know, and I don't know, the general population may not spend much time thinking about it, but every piece of clothing in existence is made by somebody. They're not made by a robot, they're not made by a machine, they're made by hands. And so, you know, somebody has been paid, well or not, to produce it. And a lot of resources have gone into it as well. You know, the fiber has been produced, and there's been a lot of water, and there's chemicals, and yeah, so I think that deserves some appreciation.
Yes, definitely. And I think that it's very interesting, you know, as you were just saying, there's someone and there's hands that are
Yeah.
actually working on the cloth. And all of those people actually have the skills
Yes.
that you are trying to share.
Yes.
And do you feel like everybody should know how to mend?
Well, I guess in an ideal world, I accept that not everybody's going to learn, and that's okay. But I think that, you know, there's a huge opportunity for many more people to have the skills. You know,
Yes.
it'd be nice if we had a bit more, even if you know, not everybody can mend, but there's enough people with that skill that maybe, you know, there could be a bit of a barter system. You could maybe mend something for me and I can cook dinner for you. I don't know.
Yes, and I do love that, you know, that sharing economy, and like, and seeing things more from a community perspective, and understand that not everyone is going to do everything. Like, we
Yeah.
need those that are going to be working on the land. We need those that are going to be taking care of the children. We need those that are going to repair things. We need those that are
Yeah.
going
And
to do
I think if you
everything.
try to do everything, you're going to feel completely overwhelmed, aren't
Yeah.
you?
Yes, definitely. And what have you noticed, at least in your experience? You were saying that, you know, when you had your kids, that your perspective started to change. Was it partly like in your, like learning from your grandma?
Mm.
Did you get a sense that what you were buying for your kids as well started to shift? And were you repairing some of it? Because with kids, it's very challenging because they grow and they need a lot of different things.
With kids, it is very challenging, yes, and it's easier to justify a more expensive purchase for myself than it is for them. Absolutely. I think with kids there is a lot of passing clothes around. Like I'll give them to the neighbours and they will pass them around, and so there is that. There's definitely there's a lot of more ethical and sustainable clothing options becoming available, but I really haven't seen very much in the children's clothing space yet. So that's definitely an area, growth opportunity.
Yes. I saw some years ago, I'm pretty sure that it was in Denmark, and that there was a company that was actually renting clothing company for kids,
Right.
that actually, like, you were sent, you know, this like a box with the clothes, and then once your kid actually grows beyond them, you send them back. They send you the next size, and whatever you used, if it was needed, like they had seamstress and they had people actually repairing what could be repaired. So that that can be used by another kid. And I thought, that's such a, like, especially for kids, like that they grow and they change so rapidly, such a
Yeah,
good system.
it is. Yeah, it's excellent.
Do you think that with that, is everyone, or in your experience, are people more open now to actually sharing clothes and renting clothes more than owning them?
I've definitely seen, yeah, I guess the existence of clothing swaps, and there's a huge boom right now in like vintage resellers, that type of thing, where people do the legwork of going to find the gems in the thrift stores, and then they're selling them on their Instagram page or wherever they are. And I mean, that's a great option, because you don't have to, if you feel intimidated or you don't have time to go and look through all the items, there they are. They've been curated nicely. So that's a great option. Renting, I'm not so sure. I think it's possibly something that people do for like red carpet events or that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I do hope that soon we get more into that space, because that means that less garments are actually created and they are shared around. Because especially, as you say, like I see this more usually with women, that there is this tendency in society to actually having to the need not to wear the same thing twice, or not to be
Yeah.
at events or gatherings wearing the same thing. And actually, like, I remember, I think it was last year or 3 years ago, I can remember, where Kate Hall, that she's one of our brand ambassadors, that for the New Zealand Fashion Week she wore the same clothes every single day, with like in different ways. And that was such a big thing. And I'm like, well, that's because, especially for women, there is that
Yeah.
societal pressure of changing. And I think that that's where perhaps the renting has a lot more potential, because if
Yes.
you need to wear all of the time something different.
Yes, that's right. And also, possibly we're not as used to trying to reinvent our clothes in the way that earlier generations had to be good at that, because that's the only options that they had. Whereas maybe it's been easier for us just to buy something new than to have to think about how could I, make this look different. Or yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have most of my clothes. Actually, I've had the same for the last 15, 20 years. And it's interesting looking at photos, and I always see the same. It's like looking at my photos from all of my trips and different things, and I'm like, I'm wearing the same t-shirts, I'm wearing the same thing, and I'm like, actually, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. I don't want people to feel worried that this idea is that you can't buy anything and that you have to wear the same clothes forever and ever. Because it's not about that. It's really more about just being mindful, slowing down, not just using impulse buying as some kind of I don't know, activity that happens without really a purpose.
Yes, and what do you think that, in terms of that, what's the place of op shopping, and like, because I know, for example, like here in New Zealand, it's quite a big deal. Back in Argentina, it's not.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
So here I was like surprised with how much it is a thing.
Yeah. And it's certainly people are becoming more aware of it. The profile of op shopping seems to have grown. It used to be in previous times, it was a bit of an unusual hobby, but it seems to be a bit more mainstream now. I think also on the note of op shops, it's also important to be aware that op shops, thrift stores generally don't have the capacity to repair things that you donate to them if they need repairing, and most likely they'll end up in the landfill because they don't have capacity to do that. They really can only deal with things that are in resellable quality when they're delivered to them. But I think it's a fantastic option. You know, I think all these options are probably things that we should incorporate more.
And would you be able to share a little bit about, you sent me like the other time some information about Koha apparel.
Oh, yeah.
Would you be able to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Koha is an organisation that I volunteer for. They were set up not so long ago by Charlie Cox, and she was volunteering in an op shop, and she saw that some people were not able to purchase clothes from the op shop, and so she felt that having some decent quality clothing was really a human right. And so she offers, she collects donated clothes and she offers them to people for a pay what you can system. So I, you know, when I read about what she was doing, I thought, wow, that really is just so special. And I thought I could really help out. And so I help her out with mending things that are donated. And I'm not the only one. She does have other people helping her with that as well. And then another thing that we do is sometimes clothes are donated to her that are not suitable to be handed on. And so we've been repurposing them. I cut them up and make them into small bags. And she's had donations of new underwear and sanitary products, and she packs them up and makes some little packs to give out to people. So we're really using all the available resources, because those clothes would otherwise go to landfill otherwise if we didn't, you know, come up with a new use for them. So yeah.
And that's incredible. Like I was reading up on it, and I do think that it's such a big deal, because the amount of clothes that are created and the amount of them that end up in landfill, not only it's shocking, but also it's a problem that we have. And the same with food, the amount of food that we waste. And at the same time, there's so many people that are not able to actually get food or clothes because of their life situation.
Yeah.
We could as easily, like as you say, like just being able to like have them be part of like sharing like a piece of clothing that if needed to be repaired, it can be repaired, but there is so much there available and it's not distributed.
Yeah, that's right. It's really about getting the resources to the place where they're needed. Yeah, definitely. I think she's doing an amazing job.
Yes, and with you as well, if you're supporting that. And with that, I wanted to ask you, where do people like start on, like, what is the first thing to get people interested in mending?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think taking notice of your clothes, having a look at them and seeing what they're made out of is a first step. It's sort of deepening your relationship a little bit. And then there's a lot of resources. There's a lot of resources online. You can find anything on YouTube. If you need to replace a button, you can find it. Or another great option, you're talking about the sharing economy, is asking somebody to show you how to do it. I'm sure that, you know, there might be someone in your network who knows how to do it, who could show you. Or then you can, you know, look at, often community centres might have events, or there's classes and those kind of things as well, if you really want to get into it.
Definitely. I remember when I was living back in California, I had to actually learn for the first time to use a sewing machine.
Oh, great.
And I remember, like, before like actually doing it, I was like, oh my god, like this seems quite daunting, because I never had, when I was a kid, any experience with that. Then realizing, oh, this is actually nice, and this, like, you know, I had to use my focus, and it was a time that I was just sitting there and I had what I needed to do. I was making meditation cushions, and it was just, like making sure that everything was moving correctly and that I kept on going like with that. And I felt, as you were saying before, it's not that challenging. um, and B, the experience of doing it felt really good.
Yeah. It's interesting. I actually, most of the mending that I do by hand, even though I do have a sewing machine, but I've actually come to prefer working with my hands. And it's that really precious time where your hands are busy, which gives your mind space. Possibly other people might meditate or they might exercise or whatever it is. It's that time where your hands are busy and you can just process what's going on. Yeah, and that was behind my the name of my business, which is That Perfect Hour, which is that the slowing down, the just focusing on what you're doing and just having a bit of quiet time and peace. Yeah.
Definitely. As you say, like for mental health, now that mental health issues are becoming more prevalent, and like, of course, as well with the pandemic and everything, but through the last decade or so, having that time of connection, of slowing down, it's so important. And I know my friend Claire from Make Give Love, she uses actually the knitting as, in a sense, a place of connection with, like, for people on mental well-being. And I think that it's such an important thing that now, seeing, especially when we were talking earlier about inequalities and things like that, if people knew more of how to do this, then there might be, grandmothers that are taking care of the kids and actually using the skills of doing that. And if they don't have that many, like, resources to buy new things, repairing what they have, having that time of connection with the kids and passing on that knowledge.
Yeah, and the sense of self-reliance is really nice as well. That you, paying somebody to do a job is fine, but it's also really nice to know that you can take it on yourself. And you don't know what you can achieve until you try.
Yes. And do you find it with both with yourself and with people that you teach? Do you find that they start actually not only repairing and mending their clothes, but that starts to spread into other things?
It certainly can, yes. I mean, once you feel confident with mending, and then you could start to think, oh, maybe I could take those pants up, or maybe I could just change the hemline, or maybe I could, and then you can reinvent, get more into sort of upcycling. And I had one student say to me, oh, all the pants that I've thrown away, and I didn't need to do that.
So interesting. Yeah. And I do think, we have grown accustomed, the majority of people, to be able to throw things away and buy new stuff, or even, as you say, like just sending it to someone instead of repairing things. Like I am a lot of times quite aware that I didn't grow up with, like, if like the chair breaks down, like repairing it by myself. Like it's either sending it to someone or buying a new chair. And I didn't learn those skills. And as you say, like, it feels so empowering to actually be able to do things and to repair what you have, and not to have to rely on others to do some, perhaps potentially small jobs.
Yeah, it's actually one of my real feelings, sense of achievement, was when my daughter said to me recently, "Mummy, my socks have got a hole. You need to darn my socks." And I mean, not that I'm thrilled about darning socks, but the fact that she knows that socks can be darned, I thought that's pretty good, because I don't know how many other children of her age would know that.
Yes, that's amazing. And do they know how to repair?
Oh, she's maybe not quite up to that. She's definitely learning though.
Nice, cool. And I'm interested, for those that are interested in like studying, what are the basics, not only on skills but on things that we need? Like, do we need to have a kit? Do we need to have a machine? What's the beginning stage?
You really don't need much, and I'm sure that most people could probably rustle up the things that they need already from what they've got at home. You just need some kind of basic sewing needle. You need some thread. You may need some buttons if that's what you're replacing. Yeah, you can get pretty far with that. So there's a very low barrier to entry. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, as you get experience, you can certainly see that you might choose to invest in some nicer tools because it makes the job easier. But certainly to start out, you really can get by with some very basic tools.
Oh. And the entire you mentioned before the visible mending.
Yeah.
Do you feel that makes it in a sense more accessible for people that feel, perhaps their mending is not so perfect yet, and as well unleashes creativity?
Absolutely. I mean, if you take that pressure off yourself that it doesn't have to be invisible or perfect, I think there's no limit to what you can do, and you can really play with it and have fun. And yeah, I mean, absolutely unleash your creativity. And I think that visible mending helps because it looks really interesting. It becomes a talking point. If you're wearing your visibly mended clothes, or posting about it on social media, and the photos are really, it stands out, and it looks great, and it's different, and people engage, and they're like, wow, that's really cool. And then you can start a conversation and say, well, actually, it's not that difficult, and we're not trying to make it look perfect. We're having a bit of fun with it, adding some personality. So it really is an opportunity for creativity as well.
What have been some of the most creative ways of mending, like with visible mending, that you've seen?
Wow. Well, I mean, the sky's almost the limit. It's I personally have taken a lot of inspiration from traditional Japanese sashiko stitching, which is absolutely beautiful. I certainly don't call my work sashiko because I'm not trained in that. I just really appreciate the style, and I like to use the sashiko thread because it's really beautiful, thick cotton thread that is very strong. It makes a beautiful mend, and it goes really well. It looks beautiful and goes really well on jeans. So it makes really beautiful white stitching. It's often done in geometric patterns. Yeah, so that was, I think, seeing that really piqued my interest in learning how to do that, definitely.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I think that it must be something from the Japanese culture. I don't know so much, but they do have, from not just from clothing, but with some different products that in a sense repairing. And I can't remember from the top of my head now the concept, but it's basically like if you have like a mug or a ball or something like that, actually like having visibles a lot of times with gold and other things, like actually repairing it, and it's seeing that imperfection actually is what makes it beautiful.
Exactly, and makes it unique. It's not the same as what everybody else has. And I see a similar thing with the sashiko stitching, and I mean that practice arose out of absolute necessity, but they managed to make things beautiful regardless of the difficult circumstances.
Definitely. And have you been finding that people, when they take your workshops, that how do they respond in terms of, you know, what they need to do, and how much do they carry on with that afterwards?
Yeah, it's really one of the most fun aspects is getting some feedback or photos back afterwards of things that people have mended. I recently did a series of workshops, and when we got to the last one of the students was wearing a jumper that she had darned from the previous workshop, and that just completely made my day.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, that she'd taken the skills from the previous one and she had run with it, and that's so amazing. It's really it's really heartwarming, but it also kind of shows that you don't need a lot of learning time to be able to put those skills into practice and be applying them.
Yes, and because I do think that some of these spaces are mostly female skewed. Do you find that many men are learning this and are using these skills?
I would agree with you 100%. It's hard to say, but I think, you know, of the people that follow me on social media, I think maybe 2% might be men. Yeah, it's very small.
Yes, it's very interesting. Like I've been talking a lot lately about on everything that has to do about conscious action and conscious living.
Yeah.
It's interesting seeing how a lot of things on the well-being industry and on the zero waste and fashion revolution, most of it is like women-led, and I wonder, you know, what all of the time, like what can I do to make a shift in that and get like men more interested in all of this, because this is not, I don't know if it feels like it's a quite a feminine thing and that's why they don't do it, or what's the thing. I still haven't figured it out yet.
That's a real challenge. I can see men maybe becoming more involved in the gardening or the composting or growing their own food. Maybe that's a way in.
Yes, it's very interesting.
I mean, of course, sewing has always traditionally been seen as something that women do, and for whatever reason,
Yes, interesting.
It'd be nice to change it.
Yes, definitely, and I think that's the thing for me with all of the work that I'm doing is, as you say, finding that entryway, because once we get interested, that starts to spread into almost every aspect of our life, is we allow ourselves to be open and create the change from there. And I was wondering if you can share with everyone one resource that you think that would be beneficial for people to check.
I think checking out Fashion Revolution is a great place to start. I think they really provide a huge amount of resource and information about lots of different aspects of what things could be changed within the current fashion system. You know, they talk about the environmental situation, what's happening with the garment workers, what's happening also about what you can do as an individual as well, and provide really tangible things that you can do. So yeah, I think that's a great place to start.
Wonderful. And if you have only one tip that you can give to people, what would that tip be?
I think I alluded earlier, but really that things that are worth learning take time and effort, and that's okay. It's okay to be a beginner. It's okay to try something and for you not to be happy with the outcome in the beginning, but that things that are worth learning, you know, it's worth your time to put in a bit more effort.
Yes, definitely. That's a good one. On a personal level, what has been your latest small act of kindness?
This is a tough question. Not that I don't think I'm kind, but it's hard. You know, it's hard to think. I quite often, when I'm walking home with the children, I always pick up rubbish and they see me and they're like, "Mom, you went to McDonald's." No. Every time I say no, I find lolly wrappers in my pocket. Mom, you've been eating lollies. No, I picked them up off the ground.
That's a good one. I actually, like, a lot of times I find myself coming to the office in the morning and picking up whatever I find on the way. And like, I don't know, a lot of times it's like that. And I had a few times people like, Ryan, like, you went to KFC? Like, and I'm like, oh no, that was just like on the street. But it's interesting because I think, like, when people see us and if they don't have the full story,
yeah.
and it's the interesting thing of, what we are showing to the world. It's very interesting, especially nowadays on social media and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So interesting. And what is the one thing that you wish that everyone in the world knew?
Well, I guess it would be really handy to know that mending's not difficult. That even though it might seem difficult to get started, it's actually really quite easy. Yeah.
Beautiful. And how can people like learn a little bit more and follow you and take part of some of the learnings?
So I'm at That Perfect Hour on social and online. Yeah, so they can find me there.
Cool. And are you running things online and in person, right?
Yes, of course. COVID has kind of forced that. I have been doing some workshops on Zoom, which I'm becoming more comfortable with as we go. And I mean, it's had the advantage that it's opened up my audience to people that are not necessarily close by. So yeah, we're taking the good with the bad.
Wonderful. So I'm going to share on the episode's note for everyone that wants to go and check it out. That Perfect Hour. Check out some of the workshops if you're in Auckland, perhaps sometime, if it's possible, in person. But also online. And I do hope that if you've been listening to this episode, that you actually get some inspiration to try and give it a go and learn some like mending skills. And if you already do that, I would love for you to share what has been your experience and perhaps sharing some photos of your work. That would be amazing. But thank you so much, Renee, for taking the time to be here, for the work that you're doing into trying to make this more accessible for people and hopefully reducing our impact on our footprint on what we do with our clothes.
Thank you. It's been really fun.
Wonderful. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.